And so, by way of introduction, my name is Aldrima Harper. I am a podcast launch strategist and organizing consultant, business consultant as well. And I'm the host of the Organizedpreneur podcast. And so, I want to thank you for joining me. And so, one of the things that I decided to do was to combine my areas of expertise and put them or not put them, but use those areas in terms of my podcasting, because those are the things that I absolutely love to talk about: business, organizing, and podcasting. And so I decided to combine those areas of expertise and passion into my business and my podcasting endeavors. And so I am here to help guide you through some of the complexities. I know that a lot of people feel like sometimes it's hard to launch a podcast. And so today we're going to talk about some of those questions that I get around podcasting. So my role is to help you get through some of the overwhelm and the complexities and the obstacles and all of those things that may seem daunting when it comes to launching a podcast. And so what I promise you is that some of the skills that and the things that I'll be talking about today will help you in your business as well as your podcast. And so because they'll be transferable, because when you talk about business and when you talk about podcasting, you kind of have to look at it in the same way. Okay. And so it's going to help you in both of those areas. And so I would love for you to actually comment below whether or not you have a business or whether you have a podcast. You can say business, or you can, type in, let's do it this way: a 1 for business, a 2 for podcast, if you have one. And so I would love to know that. That is really very helpful to know who I'm talking to. Um, and you're going to get actionable insights and practical tools that you can apply immediately to your podcasting endeavors. And so the steps that we'll be talking about are actually foundational to building a podcast and or business. So I always encourage everyone to take notes, but more importantly, take action, because the things that we talk about in the masterclass are particularly podcasting, are not just about creating content. It really is about strategically positioning yourself in a competitive market, because podcasting is a competitive market, right? There's a lot of people that's launching podcasts. And so, Nicole, I thank you for joining me today. You came at the right time. And so we're going to get right into it. And then afterwards, we'll have a time of Q&A. I'll be here to answer any questions that you may have around launching your podcast. And so, yeah. So the masterclass today is actually based on a question that was submitted when they registered for this masterclass. And so they asked the question: what are the challenges in launching your podcast? And I thought that was a really, really good question, because a lot of people, they ask everything else except that. Like they ask, what is the equipment that I need? What, how can I do this? What kind of mic do I need? And really, there are challenges, in terms of launching your podcast. However, you got to know what those things are. And so today we're going to talk about 5 of those challenges. And so, here we go. Okay. And so, there we go. And so we're going to talk about stats. We're going to talk about steps, and we're going to talk about strategies. So, yeah, there we go. Okay, great. Because I heard an echo for a second. So,
Okay, I was on my phone, so I wanted to get on my computer.
Gotcha, gotcha. Okay. So what I'm going to do so that we have a very, very clear recording, clean recording, I'm going to go ahead and let me see. I'm going to mute you. I don't know if you can mute yourself, but I'm going to mute. Oh, you already did. Oh, you're on it. You're on it. Thank you. So we're going to get through the content here, and then we'll have some time for a little bit of Q&A. And so again, we're going to talk about stats, steps, and strategies to help you launch your podcast with confidence and clarity. Okay, with confidence and clarity. And so 75% of podcasts never make it past the 10th episode. That's like they're out of every 10, 7 don't make it past the 10th episode. And the reason I can identify with that is because after launching 3 podcasts, the first one only has 12 episodes. So I made it a few past, 10 episodes, but I stopped. I stopped due to lack of clarity, lack of confidence, and lack of consistency. And so what we'll be talking about are the major challenges in launching a successful podcast. And I can tell you from when I launched my first one, which was back in 2013, there's only 12 episodes because I did not know exactly who my audience was. I I had a niche, but I wasn't sure about my audience. I wasn't clear on that. And so that brings me to challenge number 1. Challenge number 1 is defining your niche and audience. And there's a statistic that says 60% of podcasters attribute early struggles to lack of clarity in their niche and audience. And that's also even when you think about business. A lot of people in business, they struggle when they don't have a niche or an audience. They don't know who they're talking to. So they're just kind of pulling things, out of the air. And I did that. So I can really attest to that. It's like throwing spaghetti on the wall and seeing where it lands because you don't know. So the same thing applies in podcasting. You got to define your niche and your audience. You got to be clear about your target audience. And so what I'm going to do is give you 3 tips in order to do that, because I don't want you to struggle that in that area. And so, but now if you have a business and you're looking to launch your podcast as a medium to support that, then you may be a little bit clearer about your niche. But if you don't, I submit to you that this is the most important step before you buy a microphone, before you look at the platforms to launch your podcast. Like, where am I going to, am I going to go on Spotify? Am I going to go, on YouTube? What? Define your niche and your audience. Okay. And so here are a couple of tips that I can share with you. So start with your expertise and your passion, and ask yourself, who would benefit most from this content? Because I know that anyone that's here live with me right now, or if they're watching the replay, you have expertise, you have passion, and you can talk about it. If I was to sit down with you right now and say, okay, what is it that you love to do? Tell me about, who you love to serve. Tell me about your expertise. Tell me about what is it that you would do if no one paid you? You would probably be able to talk well about it, right? And so everyone has something that they can that they're an expert in, right? And so one of the things that I like to tell people is that when you hone in on those things, because if you can figure out a way, or if you can figure out that intersection, between your purpose, your proclivity, and your passion. That is where the sweet spot is, right? Your proclivity, what is it that you are more, prone to do? Like for me, I can tell you mine is hands down organizing, geeky stuff, techie stuff. I can do that all day long. I can talk about it all day long, right? It's a passion of mine. I've identified that. I remember areas when, as a little girl, the things that I used to love to do, right? Some of you may not remember cassette recorders. I used to install them in my car, cassette players, right? That might be before your time, but that 65, that was around my time. We had cassettes in our cars. And so I used to love to do those things, right? And so because it was like I wanted to figure out. I didn't want anybody to give me any instructions. I wanted to figure it out. And so anyway, because I had this proclivity toward it, right? And so I've seen over the years how things have developed, and how that passion has turned into what I love. One of the things that I remember as a little girl also was that they used to call me business lady. Well, they used to call me business lady. It was like BIT, business lady, because I loved business. I didn't know what it looked like, but one of the things I would do is I would carry around a little briefcase, even though the briefcase didn't have anything in it. But that was how that's what was my image of what a business person looked like. And I had, other things that I love to do. I launched my first business when I was in junior high, selling snacks and homemade goods, to kids in the neighborhood and things like that. And so all of those things, as I've grown over the years, I can see where that sweet spot. And so I know now what my purpose is. And then I discovered a medium because I love podcasting. And I'll spare you the story on that. If you listen to any of my other podcast episodes, I share how that came about. But so there's a sweet spot. That is my point. But your responsibility as a steward over your gift and the things and your purpose, it is up to you to discover, develop, and deploy what you're here to do. Okay. And so with that, you're going to need some tools to help identify some of those things, like who you're going to serve, because that's what we're talking about. Once you discover it, how can I serve people in that capacity? So we're all aware that there's social media, right? So things you can do is like get into a group that sparks your interest. Look at some of the questions that people ask about the things that that you have the answer to, right? And so that's like a no cost way, in order to do that. And you can do your research on it. There's like Google Trends. I think there's a website called it's either Answer the Public or Ask the Public. I think I can't remember which it is, but type that in, and what you'll find is people ask questions about certain topics. And so you can create your topic and your podcast around what people are asking, because the thing that you do not want to do is start creating stuff with no idea whether or not there is a market, or whether or not there's a gap in that market, because then you're going to be among all of the other competitors in that same market. You have got to make sure that you stand out. That was one of the things that I did. I used to create stuff, and I would create courses and things like that, and then I would have no buyers because I wasn't catering to what they were asking. And so now when I create my content around podcasting, I make sure that I'm creating it around questions that people are asking, right? So, all right. So those are a few things that you can do. Let me move on to challenge number 2. Challenge number 2 is overcoming technical challenges. Okay. Overcoming technical challenges, equipment choices, editing software. All of that can really be very daunting. And as a matter of fact, there's a statistic that says around 50% of podcasters cite technical issues as a major reason for delaying their launch, right? And so, because I get that question all the time, like it seems overwhelming, it seems daunting, I don't know where to start, things like that. But there are way too many advances in technology that's out there that can really serve you and really collapse that learning curve. Like you can do everything in one platform. Okay. When you decide to launch your podcast. Now, as far as mics and things like that, I started out with my earbuds. That was all I had. That you can do that in a phone, right? But, eventually, of course, you do want to look at other, equipment, to kind of make you feel like a real podcaster. And so, but there are things that you can do. But the thing that I am submitting to you is that you do not allow the tech to stop you. Okay. And if you are a subscriber of my podcast, it's called the Organizedpreneur Podcast. You can go to organizedpreneurpodcast.com. I shared in some episodes where you can start with the basic equipments. I believe it was actually the last episode. I want to say it was 115. I should have had that in front of me. I don't, but it's the most recent episode. But you can start with, earbuds, microphone, or you can start with a microphone like this. This is a Yeti microphone. You can start with free editing software like Audacity. Now there is a learning curve, but there's still other, and I will put that in, I'll make sure I put that in the chat with what I like to share. There are two places. Let me say this before I move on. So when I'm talking about, the technology that's out there, you can start with Spotify for podcasters that has partnered with Riverside that allows you to do everything in one platform. You can even go live, you can record yourself, you can edit everything, and there is a very short learning curve. So I do want to put my link in there. Because I have an affiliate, I'm an affiliate of Riverside, not just because I want to make money. I'm an affiliate of Riverside because it is a great platform to start with. So I will put that in the chat if you're interested in that as well. Let me go ahead and put that. Let's see here. I'll put that link. Oops, let's see. Did I do it? Oh, there we go. So that is actually I put it in there twice. Sorry about that. But if you click on that link, it will take you directly to, oops, let me do this. It will take you directly to the platform. But like I said, they have partnered with Riverside, which makes it so easy to launch your podcast. And so my point is there really is no reason why you should not be able to launch your podcast, on your own. Okay. All right. Let me move on to challenge number 3. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was clear. And again, we'll have questions and stuff, afterwards if you have questions. But I'm telling you that there's software coming out there every day that can help you, with that. And so the tip for that, is to invest in learning. Like, take free tutorials, go to YouTube. There's resources available online. You can practice, improve your technical skills, and and do some basic editing, things like that, you can really, there's a much shorter learning curve than there was when I first started, even though I loved, uh, techie stuff, right? All right, so let's move on to number three. Number three is content planning and consistency. Content planning and consistency. That is a big one because the thing is this: if you are not clear on your audience, if you're not clear on your niche, then you're not going to be consistent. You're going to struggle with creating content because you don't know who you're talking to, right? You're not going to be consistent. So there's going to be that, well, let's see, what should I talk about today? Things like that. That is going to hinder your progress. So there's a statistic that says 64% of podcasters who struggle with growth admit they haven't maintained a publishing schedule. So, in addition to not being clear on your niche and things like that, you want to make sure that you have a schedule. One of the things that I do is I batch everything. Okay. I have themed days. And so one day I do administration, one day I do recordings, another day I do editing, another day I have calls. So I have themes. So, like, if there are several recordings that I need to do, I batch them. The other thing that I do is I repurpose my content. I have one topic, I repurpose it into my email list, I repurpose it into my episodes as well as my masterclass, right? And so you can do that and you will create some consistency because there's not that huge level of procrastination around it because you know what you're going to talk about if you plan it well, right? And so, you definitely want to do that. You can use tools like Trello, Airtable. I personally use Notion. All three of these. I can't remember if I think Airtable does have a free version, but I know that Notion has a free version and Trello has a free version. This way you can organize your episodes, list your episodes, what you're going to talk about, when you're going to record, when you're going to publish, all of those things you can do when you stay organized with some of these tools. So what I would suggest that you do is create at least a 3-month content calendar. If you can do it with just one, but when you're starting out, I would at least do a 3-month calendar and commit to a realistic frequency. Like for me, I do my podcast once a week, one episode a week, because I know I can realistically commit to that, right? So that is that was number 3, okay? Number 4, marketing and growing your audience. Building an audience from scratch is a challenge for new podcasters. And the reality is it takes time, especially when you're doing it organically, right? I don't use any ads. I don't use because I'm just not, I don't want to spend money like on Facebook ads or anything like that when I don't know what I'm doing. And so I don't use any ads. I use platforms that help me to get my voice out there. I do use social media to some extent. I use events like this in order to reach and grow my audience. And so, but the stats show that only 20% of new podcasters reach a substantial audience within the first 6 months. So it's not a sprint, right? It takes time to build a business. It takes time to grow your podcast. And so, a lot of people want that instant growth. Well, if you want instant growth, you're going to have some instant money to put behind it, right? And so, but the best way that I have found that really works for me is starting out leveraging your existing network. Like if you are in business, maybe you already have your email list. If you're on social media, you're connected to some people, family, friends. Get them on board and ask them to help you promote your podcast, right? And so people want to see you successful, right? And it's not something that you can do alone, right? You're going to need the support of, a good community, family, friends, people that you know. So also, this is really a very good tip for you to follow, is to, before you launch your podcast, get on other people's podcasts, be a guest on other people's podcasts. That way you're tapping into new audiences. You're tapping into their audiences, especially if you connect with someone that has a podcast, and um, it aligns with your core values. That is extremely important. You don't want to be on a guest on a podcast if it does not align with your core values, because chances are their audience is not going to align with your core values. So then you're just building an audience, but you're not building an audience that align with your core values, right? But you can definitely grow an audience by simply being a guest on other people's podcasts. Do that for like 6 months until you're ready to launch yours. And I can tell you, there are people out there, there's a ton of people that's looking for guests, right? So I would say that's probably the best way. If you're one of those that says, well, you know, my family and friends don't even know what I'm talking about, because that can be it. Sometimes they don't know. Like I know, like people in my family, they're like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So because I'm talking about podcasting, I'm talking about business and organizing. Now they may be able to connect with the organizing piece of it, but not the podcasting part. So leverage other people's network by getting on other podcasts. Be a guest. Do that for 6 months. Um, okay, so number 5, the last one, overcoming imposter syndrome. That is another huge challenge. There's a statistic that says 70% of new podcasters experience imposter syndrome at some point in their journey. I would actually suggest that the number is probably higher, because when you're in this online space, in this online market space, there is, a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of people, that do what you do, and they seem to be more successful than you, or so you think, you know, but you cannot let that, deter you. You cannot let that hinder your progress. And so you've got to push past the noise, right? And so but even in business, a lot of people feel unqualified, and all of that just leads to self-doubt, right? And so you've got to push past that, because I believe that everyone has a voice, and their voice matters. And it doesn't matter what the topic is. Someone that you're speaking to, it's going to resonate with. Okay. And so, it's about, making those type of connections. Right. So, um, one of the things that you can do is just remind yourself that even those that are successful, they also were beginners at some point, right? There's only one you. You have expertise and unique experiences and perspectives that no one else has. So you can stand out, right? So that makes you unique. I don't care if they do the same thing that you do. There are thousands of life coaches out there, right? But everyone has a unique experience, a unique perspective, a unique way of delivering their content, right? And so it's going to resonate with someone. And it may be that your experience, something that you've gone through, may resonate with someone else. And it likely will. So I want you to focus on that. Focus on sharing your story. Focus on sharing, your experience, right? And because, like, I can tell you, for me, um, I I am I am very much an introvert. And let me tell you, it took years and years and years to get to the point where I would do something like this. I've been doing, podcasting, for a number of years now, but I didn't do it overnight, right? It took time for me to find that sweet spot where I can share some of my experiences. I could share and not go through that, imposter syndrome, and I would say this. I don't think that anyone ever stops thinking about, their self-worth or things like that. You just can't let it stop you. That's where the problem, would lie. And so, but yeah, but everyone was once a beginner, right? Engage with your audience, right? When I come and do these, master classes, I engage with the people. It doesn't matter if it's one person or if it's 10 people or 20 people or whatever. I'm going to engage with you, right? And so you want to make sure that you're, like, getting feedback, right, from people. I ask people, questions, right? Did that make sense? Does that resonate with you, right? And always be in a place where you're learning and leveling up, right? Don't ever, whenever you are in a place where you stop learning and stop growing, you stop living, to me, right? So always be in a place where you're like, okay, I want to learn about this. I want to level up in this. I want to get better with that, So always be in that place, right? And the last thing I would say about that, as far as overcoming imposter syndrome, would be to regularly revisit your mission and the reason why you started the podcast in the first place. This will help you to stay motivated. This will help you um, to to think about why you are doing what you're doing and the people that you want to serve. So there are people out there that's waiting for you to show up. I know you've heard that before, but that really is a fact. There are people that's waiting for you to show up, right? So I've shared with you the 5 major challenges that keep people stuck in launching a podcast: defining your niche and your audience, technical challenges, content planning and consistency, marketing and growing your audience, and overcoming imposter syndrome. So, my question to you is there anything that I've said that resonates with you? And the second question is, what are you going to do to get past that hurdle? Okay. So those are the things that I would say are the questions that you should ask yourself, right? What am I going to do to get past one of those hurdles or all of those hurdles, right? Now, here's the thing. And, if you're just jumping on, I don't have anything to sell to you, right? All I have is an opportunity that I share to jump on a call that will help you to get from where you are now to where you're trying to go. In and if anything in that call serves you and helps you to fill in that gap that I can share with you, or anything that I can offer you, any type of offer or program that I may have to help you fill in that gap, I will share it with you at that time during that call. If it makes sense for us to work together, we'll discuss how to move forward. But otherwise, it is a strategy call. I don't have anything to sell to you today. So now here's my question, Nicole. What resonated with you? And was there one thing that you thought of that while I was sharing that you can do to get past that hurdle?
I think the imposter syndrome is the one that
Yeah.
resonates most with me. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. That's a big one. That's a big one. And like I said, there's not any I don't know of anybody that hasn't really had that at some point in time. And so the question would be now, what do you feel like would be most important for you to get past that hurdle? And how? I mean, that may be now, let me say this too. Maybe you can't answer that right now. Maybe you're thinking, I don't know what to do, but I want you to give it some thought. And if you know anything right now, then, of course, you're definitely welcome to share that right now.
I think just continuing to work on myself and grow is the
Yeah,
key to that.
it really is. It really is. Just pushing past, keep pushing past that hurdle. Like, and know that it is not a sprint. None of this is a sprint, right? You don't just jump on and instantly, okay, I've overcome imposter syndrome. It doesn't happen, right? I mean, because you got to keep you know, things that's going to help you to stay motivated and inspired. But also when you're consistent at certain things, like I've shared with you that I am an introvert, and there were certain things that I was like, I'm not going to do that. I just don't want to do that, right? So like doing these master classes, I do these every week, and I was committed to doing this for 6 months because several things are going to happen. I may not see an increase in my audience, or I might. But the other thing is, it's going to work. It works on two things. It either works on you, the individual that's doing it, or it works on the thing that it's working on. You're going to get better at doing it. So so it either works on you or it works on the thing that you're working on. Maybe it's the technology and getting comfortable with the technology or whatever that is. So as you continue to do it and commit to that amount of time, give it at least 6 months. And I can tell you that for a while, I was one that thought, okay, well, after like 3 or 4 times, it's like, well, that's not working. Let me try something else. No, you're just starting over. So you got to commit, to something. But I can certainly, like I said, identify with, that imposter syndrome and, things like that. I saw other people that were doing the same thing that I was doing. And I was like, man, I do the same thing. In fact, based on what I'm seeing, I think I'm a little bit better at it, And so, it's still there. So you just gotta, work through resetting your mind. And that's what it's going to take, even if you got to tell yourself, something every day, like, I can do this. I'm good at this. I'm an expert at this. I know my stuff. Right. So yeah. Yeah. So do you have questions or anything that, any aha moments or anything that you wanted to share while we're still on?
How do I become a guest on a podcast?
Ah, good question. Good question. So the first thing I would probably do, and because I see people doing this now, as a podcaster, I get asked to be on people's, podcasts a lot. But if you're not a podcaster, you do want to get into some podcasting groups, because I promise you, and just do a search on Facebook, and just put in the word podcaster or podcasting. And I can't right now, I can't think of the group, but I know when you put that word in, like guest podcasting or something like that, those type of words, and they're a free group, then go into that group and just say, hey, and well, of course you want to feel, the group, but go into that group and say, I'm looking to be a guest, on a podcast. I talk about this. I talk about, just talk a little bit, about yourself when you introduce yourself in those particular groups. And so tell me now, do you already have a business? Or so tell me, I didn't give you an opportunity to, share a little bit about yourself. My apologies.
No, I don't have a business, and I am just on the with the idea stage of the podcast. I don't
Gotcha.
have any equipment. Um, I'm just I'm at before beginner.
Gotcha. So what drew you to this particular masterclass?
Uh, Being a woman, I thought you
Yeah.
might have a unique perspective,
Yeah.
and I'm taking all the classes that I can to be able to learn as much as I can about podcasting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely commend you for taking the steps to do it, because I think that's a lot of times people spend so much time just thinking about it and they never take any steps, to do it. And so there, I can tell you, let me see, when you go to I think I put that in there, organizedpreneurpodcast.com. That is actually my podcast. I talk a lot about how to launch a podcast. So that, and it doesn't cost anything. I mean, it's just, free podcast. So I talk a lot about that. And so I promise you, you will get some strategies, other than what we talked about today. And so it definitely will help you, in that, in endeavor. Yeah. And, I also, with the success strategy call, keep that link. And at some time you think, okay, I think I'm ready to talk to her now, then feel free to jump on. We'll jump on a call. And like I said, all I do is help you, with where you are and where you're trying to go. How can we fill in that gap? And if I have something that will help you, like I'm sharing right now, with the podcast, I believe that that will help you. If you go to organizedpreneurpodcast.com, I believe that that will help you get some ideas, because I talk about how to launch, and all these things. And so that's definitely how I serve people. And so yeah, so definitely, do that. So was this helpful? I mean, you know, was this helpful to you?
This was extremely helpful. Yes,
Awesome.
yes. It gave me some ideas. It's much more specific than any podcasting class I've taken.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah,
great.
I would have to say this has been the best one.
Oh, wow. That is great. Oh, thank you for that. Can I quote you on that? Because I maybe have to put that out there and say, hey.
Yes, you can quote me on that.
All right. Okay. Awesome. And